It's good to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. My Thumb Down Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews the Show. I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on a budget on my quest to brew the magic worm. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff. I'd really appreciate it. But today, we're continuing our start of Spider-Man content. We're looking at all the flip commanders this week, and today we're looking at Gwen Stacy and Ghost Spider. All of these transforming double-face commanders are going to be able to be cast on the front side for Gwen. You can pay 5 at any time to flip her over into Ghost Spider, or you can cast Ghost Spider for 5 mana at any time. So you get to kind of choose which you want to put in and where you want to take advantage of her and her abilities. So on the front side, Gwen is a 2-mana red 2/1. Whenever Gwen enters, you're going to exile the top card from your library. You can play that card for as long as you control this creature. And then for 5 mana, you could flip her over or cast Ghost Spider, Flying Vigilance Haste. You can, whenever you play a land from exile or cast a spell from exile, you put a counter on Ghost Spider, and we can remove 2 counters from Ghost Spider to exile the top card of our library, and we can play that card this turn. Ghost Spider is exactly where this deck is going to be. We want to get things into exile that we could play from exile, take advantage of growing Ghost Spider, turning her into a threat, and allowing us to take the counters off of Ghost Spider to get more into exile, right, and play more. Now, the caveat I will give all of this week and all this week's videos is you're going to notice that there are some cards that are going to be fairly high in cost just because we are still in the pre-order, the pre-order window. Meaning I expect the value of this deck to come down. A lot of these cards would come down in value, so we'll probably see that over time, but it's important to note that there are certain cards of the deck that I think at the moment at pre-release prices are still way higher than I thought they will be. But hopefully they come down by the time either you watch this video or if you catch this a few weeks or months later, the prices will come down. You can see those updated prices down in the deck list for Moxfield or Architect. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit earlier for just $1 a month, consider checking that down below to support the channel. Well, all right. There's a lot of ways to get things into exile or cast things from exile. Remember that we don't just have to put a card into exile to play it. There's so many ways you could look at this. Things like Cascade, right, on cards like Call Forth the Tempest. Cascade lets you cast that thing you cascade into for free from exile, meaning that's going to trigger Ghost Spider. You have things like Bonehorde Dracosaur, going to exile the top 2 cards of our library at the start of our turn, and we get some value if we exile cards of a certain way, but otherwise we get to play them until end of turn, and that gets more lands and or spells, right, in exile for us. Bone, who is the new in-universe printing of, I can't remember his name from that D&D secret lair, but gives all of our non-land cards in our hand without foretell. So you'll pay 2 to put the card into foretell to play on a future turn, and then you get to play it later for its foretell cost. It's saying its foretell cost is equal to its mana value -2, meaning so basically we just get to kind of reduce it by 2 to play later. And I like this idea because this allows us to protect our hand if we're worried about that. Sometimes in some games you may end up worrying about your hand, and this would let you protect cards that way. But mainly it's just a way to get more things out of exile to trigger all of our abilities. Embrace the Unknown and Ignite the Future are cards that could just let you exile the top certain cards in your library and you could play them. Embrace the Unknown has Retrace, so we could cast it from our graveyard by pitching a land to do its other costs. Ignite the Future has Flashback. We could cast it from our graveyard for its flashback costs. And if we do, we actually have to play those cards for free, which is very interesting. It does cost more mana, but I mean, mid to late game, that could be 3 spell casts, right? That could really help our board state. Ensnared by the Mara is a little different, and it puts some fun into the deck. Each opponent faces a choice. They can either exile from the top and delay hit a non-land card, and we could play that for free. Or they exile the top 4 cards of their library, and this spell deals damage to them equal to the total mana value of those cards. So this is just a very interesting choice you give your opponents. Hey, either I get something yours for free, or I deal some damage. Either way, hopefully you hit some of those spells from exile, right? And get to take advantage of that. Pretty much all 3 of these are going to be worded about the same way, and we want to see as many of these effects as we can. Exile the top 2 until the end of your next turn. You could play them. Now, the only difference is Opera Love Song only says until your next end step. The intention there is because it's an instant, right? You could play it on your opponent's turn, and then you would have until your next end step, right, to play them. But your sorcery speed ones give you to the next turn's end step. Shamil lets you discover at the end of your turn. Remember, discovering is like Cascade. The big difference between Discover and Cascade is Discover lets you play a spell with that mana value or less. Cascade has to be less than the thing you're cascading from. But both Shamil and Long Range Sensor are going to give us ways to discover. Again, free exile cast. Key to the Vault. Whenever the equipped creature hits a player in combat, you look at that many cards from the top. You may exile a non-land card from among them, and we could cast it without paying its mana cost. So again, great on something like Ghost Spider that already has flying, right? You put the Key to the Vault on it, and now we can start digging off the top for some value. Uba Mask and Urabras, that's in the deck, but we didn't get to show that up here. But Uba Mask says that if a player would draw a card, they just exile that card face up instead, and each player can play cards that they have exiled with Uba Mask. This is a really fun idea because it could potentially hurt our opponents, right? They may not want to cast their things with exile, and this is going to stop them from really drawing cards. Note that this does actually replace drawing with exiling face up. So if you have an opponent that really cares about drawing and things like that, this is going to completely mitigate that. But the point is, now every card you're drawing is coming from exile. We're getting more chances to play from exile, right? And we're getting more value, more chance to dispense that value, right, as we cast them out of there. Count on Luck lets us exile the top card of our library and play that card this turn during each of our turns. It can be good or bad depending on how early you see Count on Luck. I think Count on Luck, to me, feels better mid to late game than it does early game. But I mean, we want to plan for both. We can't just plan for the for the early game or the mid or the late game, right? We got to plan for both. And like I said, Count on Luck to me feels a little like it's a little bit of an end game card where you're going to have 8 or 9 mana. And you could play anything you hit. Shadow of the Scalds might look odd, but it's a card that I think is going to really benefit not only Ghost Spider, but all of our stuff as well. So when it comes in, you're going to exile the top 4 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you could play them. So you have this turn and next turn, so 2 total turns to play them. But then, on turns 2 and 3, just whenever you cast a spell, you put a counter on a creature you control. So if we're casting the things from exile, well, we're putting a counter on a creature, but with Ghost Spider out, that means we're putting 2 counters on, right? So this works really well with Ghost Spider's backside to either grow your whole board, or, I mean, if you have nowhere else to put them, you want to put the counters on Ghost Spider, right? Because then you can remove them to exile those cards to play. So you can kind of see where putting the counters on Ghost Spider is always beneficial, because it's exactly what we want to do in our game plan. But we don't just want things to exile, right? Playing things from exile is great, but traditionally, most of your spell slinger game plans require 1, casting the spells, and 2, profiting from casting the spells. And that's basically what this section is. You have things like Quintorius Can. Whenever we cast a spell from exile, 2 damage each opponent, and we gain 2 life. A great ability. Can discover 4 on the -3, but Quint most of the time is going to sit there and just profit you from the things you're already doing. Araxa. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere in your hand, you make a 2/2 alien red warrior creature token. Party Thrasher gives all the non-creature spells we cast from exile convoke, meaning we can help tap our creatures to pay for the colors. And at the beginning of our pre-combat main phase, if we want to, we could pitch a card to exile 2, right, and play them this turn. So not only does it add the benefit of allowing us to tap things like tokens or other things to help us pay for it, but you also get that ability to get, again, more into exile. PNLR, whenever you play a land or cast a spell from exile, you get a 1/1 Thopter, and those Thopters have haste. Vega draws us a card whenever we cast a spell from anywhere in our hand. Wild Magic Sorcerer is going to hand the first spell we cast from exile each turn Cascade, so a potentiality for more, right, spells from exile for that first one that we cast. Passionate Archaeologist, one of the classic payoffs you're going to see in a lot of these exile or Cascade Matters decks. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, it deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. So you just start targeting out some damage. Spider-Verse is one that we don't really care too much about the top half because the ledger rule doesn't really matter, but it's nice if we play Spider-Verse before Gwen, because then we can actually copy Ghost Spider, right? But it says whenever we cast a spell from anywhere in our hand, we copy it. We could choose 2 targets for the copy, and if the copy's a permanent, it gets haste. So if we can see Spider-Verse before Ghost Spider, right, then we can actually get 2 Ghost Spiders, which is pretty cool, right? Because the legend rule won't apply. and we can make a copy of it. But for everything else, hopefully we're just copying our spells. Remember, you won't get the cast triggers off the copies because you don't cast the copy. But it's important to note that you would still generate a ton of value, right, getting copies of these things out of Exile. And then Lost in the Dam, over a land enters from anywhere other than your hand, or you cast a spell from another than your hand, you get a 3/3 red spawn. So again, ways to kind of gum up our board, right? Give us some value as we're casting these things from Exile. I think we want to focus a ton on Exile Matters, but we're also a spell slinger deck at the end of the day. So, like, I think we could still care about these creatures that care about non-creature spells. Like a classic is something like Monastery Mentor, making these monk tokens with prowess whenever we cast non-creature spells, building us these board of tokens that grow for each spell we cast. I think a really classic new example is something like Vivi, right? Getting a counter on it and dealing out damage every time we cast a non-creature spell, and packs that awesome ability to add mana. And then Narset to me feels kind of interesting. She gives prowess to your whole board. Whenever she attacks, you can exile a non-creature, non-land card with mana value less than her power from any graveyard and copy it, and you cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Note that you exile the card and then cast it. So that should fulfill, right, getting something from exile. And not only that, but Narset's going to give your whole board prowess. So here's just an example of some creatures that kind of fit the game plan, but can also be great value engines on their own. If we get the Ghost Spider big enough, Chandra Condition can help us end the game. Having target creature we control deal its damage equal to its power to each opponent and each other creature. So again, take some big damage off our opponents. Fortune Teller's Talent says we can look at the top card of our library any time. And then if we get it leveled all the way up, we can play spells from the top of our library as long as we've already cast a spell this turn, and then anything we cast from anywhere other than our hand costs 2 less to cast. So that actually can affect the cards we're exiling, which is why it's really useful to level that one all the way up. And then on Civil Unrest, giving all of our non-token creatures Riot, meaning they come in with a choice of either a counter or haste, and then whenever a creature we control with a counter on it would deal damage to a permanent or player, you double that damage instead. So just caring about the counters, caring about anywhere other than our hand, you could start to see where we're just trying to fill some pieces in. But I'll set it before on the show and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my first shot at Gwen. And I think going into testing, I'd kind of want to know if we have enough pieces. Like, do we have enough of the things we want to see? Charred Foyer and Warp Space is a great example of a room that fits exactly what we want to do. On the Charred Foyer side, beginning your upkeep, you exile the top card of your library and you could play it this turn. I really like that ability. Warp Space lets you pay 0 for a spell. You play cast from exile once each turn. I really like Charfoyer and Warp Space. I just wasn't really sure where to put it in the deck, but I think it's a card that on hindsight I think would come back in almost immediately. Collector's Cage lets you put a counter on a creature, and if you have 3 more creatures with different powers, you could play its hit away card for free. My thought here is this could just put a counter on on Ghost Spider return, potentially allowing you to get more right off of its second ability if you want to. And then Kami of Celebration says whenever a modified creature you control attacks, you just exile the top card of your library. You could play it this turn, and then whenever you cast a spell from exile, you put a counter creature you control. I feel like Kami does absolutely everything Ghost Spider wants you to do. I just was trying to find a slot for it. It and Charred Foyer are probably like were the last 2 cards I cut, and I was trying to figure out like how do I do this? And the answer really is I just needed to know in testing, like, what are we seeing? How are we seeing these things play out in front of us? And if we go through testing and realize we need more ways like this to exile that are on permanents and not on spells, then I think these 2 are great things to bring right back in and help our deck out. But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtests on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not just to show off all our best plays, but it's to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand what kind of hands are we looking to keep and how are we going to set them up. I love the look of this one. 4-lander with Vivi. There we see Vega. And then we see Quim. So all we need is really 1 more mana, right, to get up to Quim. And Ghost Spider, right, for 5 on the backside. But Vivi's going to help a ton, because remember that Vivi nets you mana, and Vivi has no restrictions for the mana. It's not like some of those spells that say, oh, you can only use it, but you can only use it to cast non-creature spells or whatever. The best part about Vivi is that it's wide open in what you can use that mana for. So we'll get Vivi down. So, right, we're 1 mana off of Ghost Spider, Uncivil Unrest, Quinn, right? So we're 1 mana off of some of these things that really matter. So my thought is we do want to play some non-creature spells if we can, right, to net ourselves that mana. And there's a couple ways we could look at that. My thought is you could either go Key to the Vault into suspending this Inspiring Refrain. Suspend would mean we put it on into Exile with 3 time counters on it. You lose a time counter at the start of each of our turns, and then when the last time counter comes off, we get to cast it for free. This one just draws us cards. My thought is, how do we use the mana to our benefit? If you're wondering how you do that there, well, Key to the Vault costs me 2. VV goes up to 1, and then I'd have 3 mana right for that. Or, I go for something like Chandra. Chandra's +1 can add double red. That plus VV could get me, something. That actually might make the most sense. So VV deals out the damage. The double red could get Gwen in if I wanted to, but again, we'll kind of probably end up losing that card. Because it says whenever you control this creature, not, and the backside won't count. So I'm trying to decide how worth it that is. I kind of almost rather just pay the 1 into VV in the 2 there to play the Key to the Vault. That way we have it down. And now we're coming into the next turn with some more pieces on board. Quarry Mountain Monastery is going to come in untap because we do have those planes. So again, 5 mana here, and then VV can actually give us 2 mana right now because of its ability. So I think I'd probably take up Chandra again. I'm thinking on Civil Unrest. Use 3 of it. This is going to tick up VV. And then now my thought is we could go into Ghost Spider if we want to. Ghost Spider isn't going to trigger VV, right? Because it's a creature spell, but we used VV's mana. We'll get to scry 1 because it shares a type with our commander. We'll keep that on top. And then I'm just going to have Gwen come in, I think, with a counter off the Uncivil Unrest. We don't need Gwen to attack this turn. And Gwen's going to be really great with that Key to the Vault, right? So I don't mind this at all. VV could still attack. Remember, VV doesn't have to tap in order to use its ability, so it's a 3/6. We could have thought about putting something like Key to the Vault on it as well. But again, I like that turn. And now coming into turn 6, remember, Wild Magic Sorcerer is great with Cascade, right? But we don't really have too many ways to Cascade just quite yet. I kind of like Quintorius Can here. That's going to get a counter there. We could tick up Chandra if we want to help pay for the double red. Or we could tick her up to just exile the top if we want to. But think right now of the double red, pay the 3 there in, have Quint come in. That, again, triggers VV damage. So still got 6 mana left, right? I could go drawing, but I think I kind of like the idea of equipping the Key to the Vault to Gwen. And then I do have Quint's activation. I could either tick it up to make a spirit or tick it down to discover 4. I think I'm just going to tick it up to make the spirit, just protect ourselves a little bit more. We'll want it to be able to block both of these just in case. Again, Ghost Spider has Vigilance. VV does not, but I think we want to attack, right, because of the Uncivil Unrest, meaning that, I apologize, VV's actually doing double the damage off of its ability because of Uncivil Unrest, but now you get to attack with Ghost Spider, right? It's going to be in the air, so hopefully we can find an opponent that can't block it so that we can hit. And when it does come a damage, we're like that many cards, so it should be 5, but it's going to be doubled to 10, right? So this means we get to dig really deep. And we get to exile a non-land card from among them and play it for free. There's a lot of great options. Spider-Punk's kind of interesting, stopping our things from being countered. Count on Luck does that. Araxa gets us the tokens. There's the Passionate. Plargan Nasari is really interesting. Each player exiles from the top until they hit a non-land card, and then an opponent chooses one of them. And we can cast up to 2 of the other ones for free. I think Plarg's my favorite here. I see the understanding of something like Passion Archaeologist, but the reason I like Plarg is because it's just going to end up leading to more exile, more damage off Canned, more damage off of VV in that. And then we play it, right? Counter here. That won't, right? Because it's not that, but you will get a damage off of Canned. And we'll have it come in with a counter on it. And again, now I think we're just in good shape here. We've got this thing set up, go into our next turn, right? keep trying to get things on board. Plarg's going to end up probably getting us at minimum 2, right? At least 2 casts, hopefully. And then we could get something like Quintorius is -2 to discover 4. Chandra could exile that top card of our library with her +1, and we have a lot of chances here to mix this big damage that's going to come from Vivi and Ghost Spider together, with these great resources. If I have to say, I think that was a little Christmas landy of a draw, but I think it's important to see like this ecosystem, right, that you're trying to set up, this ecosystem that you're trying to put together of how do I get things into exile and how do I cast them from exile for benefit. 4-lander here with Chimil. There's Spider-Punk. Remember, Spider-Punk's going to give all of our spiders riot. Really only useful for things like Ghost Spider, but spells and abilities can't be countered, damage can't be prevented. It's huge for us. That's all we're trying to do, and then Brace the Unknown to dig deeper. Right, so I like the Monasterian on turn 1. We'll get Spider-Punk in. So there's the Urabrask that we talked about before. So at the beginning of our upkeep, we exile the top card of our library, and we can play that card this turn. Note that this doesn't stop draw. This just says, hey, we get an extra one. And then on our opponent's turn, the next time they would draw, they exile the top card of their library instead. So it kind of stops the first of their draws. It won't stop all their draws. You can see why Ubamask is clearly better than Urabrask, but Urabrask is still useful. So turn 3, I mean, I can get Gwen in. It kind of feels weird. What do I do for 3 mana? I don't really want to Embrace the Unknown because I worry that if I exile 2 things that are really good and I can't play them, I'd just be worried that I'm going to waste the mana. So I almost feel like it's better to just hold up mana, make people think I have something, I guess, so to speak. Okay, well, there's Bonehorde Dracosaur. I feel like if there's anything I'm going to do this turn, it's Embrace, right? You exile the top 2. We can play them until the end of your next turn. So there we go. I thought there was trying to get that land. And now Inspiring Refrain's probably just going to end up stuck in exile. Unfortunately, not much I can do. Turn 5 here, there's the Dracosaur, right? Now that sets up that nice exile on the next turn. So that we can start getting those cards set aside, right? And start casting them. And then here you go, Bonehorde. Oh, sorry, it's beginning the upkeep. I apologize. So the exile cards would be Araxa and then Chandra's Ignition, and then we get Vivi into hand. This is brutal because I like both of these. We get a treasure, so we do actually have 7 mana, right? Or 6 mana, 5, 6. We play the land for 7. This is brutal because I've got to probably let one of them go, which kind of stinks. I really want Vivi, right? Vivi is one of those cards that's going to really help us out in the long run, which would mean that basically I have to let Chandra's go and just play Araxa. My thought there is because Araxa is going to lead me to a lot of value with those tokens. And I think Vivi is just one of those cards that anytime you can see it, you want to value it because its ability is so good. And it's kind of bonkers at what it can do. But now we've set ourselves up really nice. We have pieces that are going to hopefully take some removal away from Gwen. And then as we come to our next turn, land and non-land, so we're going to get a dinosaur and a treasure off of Bonehorde. Now we're looking at what? 8 mana? Sorry, don't want to play that. Sorry. We want to play the land out of exile. If I play the backside of Ghost Spider, I only have 3 mana. Well, 4 mana, right? Because of Vivi's ability, right? So I'll play Ghost Spider first. I'm going to have it come in with a counter, right? Because it already has haste. Play the land. That's going to put another counter on Ghost Spider. And then that'll make me one of those alien warriors, right? Yeah, 3 mana. Why was I think it was 4? Oh, because if it was a non-creature spell, then it would have been that for... Do I have to just let Narset go? I don't really want to let Narset go, but I don't think I have a choice, do I? Because I have no way to get any other mana on... I don't have no other way to get a counter on Vivi this turn. I would have had to have played, like Chimil or something instead, and I still wouldn't have had the mana. So I think I have to let Narset go. I think I just have to get something like Monastery Mentor in. just to keep the keep the pressure up, have some more ways to go wide. That just stinks. I guess I could have technically, instead of doing that, and then I think about it, I could have removed the 2 counters from Gwen just to see what we would have gotten off the top. Let's do that. I mean, I still think maybe that would have been the best line, but let's do it. And it's Quarry Mountain, and unfortunately, we already played our land this turn, right? So it's gone. Yeah, I still think this is the line. Ghost Spider becomes really good. You still have Dracosaur in the air, and then again, now you just hope to hit, Chamil. You hope to hit some more non-land cards to get VV going, and I think we're in a good spot. Interesting, we saw VV 2 playtests in a row, but hey, we're not going to turn down seeing VV, right? Playtest number 3, 4-lander here with a Soul Ring Ponder, and there's Aranya, one of the new spiders. Works really well with Gwen. Whenever you attack, you put a counter on a target attacking creature, and then whenever a modified creature we control hits a player, we exile the top card of our library and we can play it this turn. So again, because Ghost Spider is already in the air, it means there's a hot chance she's going to be able to hit somebody in the air, right? So I think obviously getting Soul Ring down in turn 1 makes sense. I can either go for, well, no, I can't go for Aranya this turn with the way that I played the land. So I think I just do this. I want to ponder. Let's ponder. Let's just see. We look at the top 3, and then we can play back in the order and draw, or we could shuffle. I think I'm content to just shuffle. Okay. So then as we come to this turn, now this is coming in untapped. This is mana for Ghost Spider if we want to do that. Note that Aranya does not have to attack for her ability. It just says whenever anything attacks. I think I just want to get in Ghost Spider this turn. And then this turn, get in Aranya. Attack, put the counter on Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider hits, drops the card off, and unfortunately we can't play it, right? We just don't have the mana. That's kind of a bummer. Probably should have thought about that ahead of time, but that's okay. I think that's the important thing about keeping that in the back of your mind. Mara could be really fun. I think what it probably would have made more sense is, because that's not a May, exiling the card. Maybe we just, maybe we wait the turn to put Aranya down and instead of trying to lose. Thankfully, it was only something like Pia Nalar, which isn't that bad at the end of the day, but I think you'd probably just wait and do this first. Attack. Now we get a Felwar Stone. There we go. Now we can play it. 6 mana. Almost like the idea of something like Ensnare by the Mara. Just see what you get. We could go for something like Wild Magic Sorcerer for once. The only problem is we're not really cascading at the moment. I want to leave Ripples up to protect Ghost Spider. I guess we could embrace the unknown. It's to the end of our next turn, right? I think I played a land this turn. So come to our next turn, play the land, counter on the Ghost Spider. I like Monastery Mentor, right? Counter on the Ghost Spider. I've got 6 mana left. I think I just go to attack, right? Exile the top card. Flawless is pretty great. I have to play that this turn, so I guess we'll just play the Flawless, right, to get the Monk. And then I almost feel like you should go for something like Ensnared sooner rather than later. I think you can actually still keep up the Ripples mana if I do that. And again, I think we're in a good space here. We found some of our payoffs. We're going to start growing Ghost Spider. If somebody removes Ghost Spider, I think I try to take advantage of something like Monastery Mentor just to fill my board up with tokens. And then, hopefully we can get Ghost Spider back down and going. But I think it's one of those ones where we have to remember that Ghost Spider is the point of our deck. And like decks who rely on their commander or key creatures to be the point of their deck, that means we either need to find a way to protect Ghost Spider or try to put down enough threats that if Ghost Spider is removed, right, we have a way around that problem as opposed to just folding to the first piece of removal on Ghost Spider. All right. Interesting one here for playtest 4. 3-lander. We see a Monastery Mentor again. We see the Soul Ring. We see Taigam. Taigam's a really interesting card. So whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you copy it, then exile that spell with 4 time counters on it, and it gets suspend. So a very interesting way to kind of get extra spells out of exile, because you get to do that. My thought here is either of these are going to have to come in untapped. Unfortunately, here on tapped on turn 2. So just play this one so you can get like something like Monastery Mentor down and get one of them tapped. You want to do the retreat because now the Deserted Beach comes in untapped this turn since it's our third land. I was gonna say I could go for Ghost Spider, or I could just try to get a spell out to trigger Monastery Mentor, but I think I just kind of like getting Ghost Spider out here. Arcane Signet makes me a monk. 4 mana. I almost kind of like something like Stormkiln Artist, but I guess you could arguably also go Tygum into Arcane Signet. What that would do is it would copy the Arcane Signet to get us now, and then we would get this with 4 time counters on it. Probably makes more sense because then we could get a second Arcane Signet. And we're still getting the cast off the monk. We're still getting the monk off the cast. And then as we come to our next turn, right, that loses a counter. Play the land in tapped. 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. I really like Ignite the Future as an option. I might have made sense to not play the Path of Ancestry in case maybe we exile a land we can play, right? Exile top 3 until our next turn we can play them. Love seeing something like Fortress Teller's Talent because then that means that we can trigger, Monastery Mentor again. But okay, so we use 3 mana. I've got 3 mana left. I guess there we go. We know we aren't going to play a land. My thought is maybe the talent. Remember, we get the copy of the talent. The talent goes here with 4 counters. I mean, truthfully, right, get to look at the top, which is so we know Dracosaur's coming. Truthfully, we don't need the second talent. Like, talent's one of those things where, like, one of them's fine. I guess if you can level them all up, it really starts reducing. But my thought is you're just getting the monk, right? You're getting the cast. We should have got a monk off the fortune as well. And then I have mana left. I mean, I could throw something like the Swords to Plowshares out there, but remember that it doesn't say that I have to play them on my turn. So I'd rather kind of leave up the Plowshares to play on somebody else's turn for removal, right? That would be a counter on, Gwen Stacy or Ghost Spider. And then, some of your monks are 2 casts up this turn? Monastery Mentor and the first one we made are 2 casts up this turn, so they could be decent attackers. And then as we come to this turn, right, remember these auto cast for free when their time counters come off them. We see a red mana mountain on top. And remember, it says as long as we cast a spell, we can play something off the top. So if I go Bone Horde, I can play the mountain off the top. I've got 1... Got 2 mana plus the mountains, so 3 mana. These, remember, go away this turn if I didn't already play them. I love the idea of something like Legion Leadership to just caught like double Ghost Spiders. And we would actually get a copy of it, right? We would actually get Tygum's ability, which is where Tygum really, I think, factors into a play like this. Do this. She only gets it if we cast from Exile, right? So she won't get it, but you'll get a monk. You get a copy of this to go off this turn. Right, doubling her power. And then, so she's 10 this turn? I'd probably just run off the Plowshares if we haven't already, just to, I guess we could have, tried to copy it as well. But the point is use it so that you can get some value. And again, now we have a great board state set up. We've got pieces on board where, we're getting things out. I think you'd start to see where the idea of this starts coming together. It's just finding these individual pieces that you like, right? Tarkir has a lot of this great flurry prowess stuff if you really want to go into that route. There's a lot of really interesting ways to pay off this, and I think what's really interesting is that you can kind of really make this deck, your own. But I'd love to know what you think of Gwen down in the comment section below, and I will catch you on the next one.